Mangwanani Malelepo Vukenjan Dubelang Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. It is the 2nd of March and you are joined by Ashwin Berry and Aina Raizakweyo.
Welcome to Africa Good Morning. Today is a World Prayer Day. Now, this is a global ecumenical movement led by Christian women who welcome you to join in prayer and action for peace and justice. Prayer is needed now more than ever. Let's take a look at World Prayer Day. Welcome back, and here are the news-making headlines. UN report at least 536 civilians casualties in Ukraine. At least 136 civilians have been killed, including 13 children, and 400 have been injured since Russia invaded Ukraine last week, a United Nations agency said on Tuesday. The real toll is likely to be much higher, Liz Trothelsel, the spokesperson of the UN Human Rights Office, told a briefing, adding that 253 of the casualties were in Donetsk and Lugansk region in eastern Ukraine. The UN World Food Programme is scaling up activities in Ukraine so that it can support up to 3.1 million people, and food supplies are running low. UN agencies on Tuesday launched an emergency appeal to respond to the soaring humanitarian need following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, calling for 1.7 billion to help people who have fled the country and those who are still inside.
Now, in our second story, world's largest civilian hospital ship gets ready for Senegal trip. The Global Mercy is a 37,000 tons hospital ship with 6 operating theaters, eye and dental clinics, and the capacity to care for 200 patients. The ship is in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where it has been custom built for the charity Mercy Ships. Mercy Ships says its mission is focused on the region because 93% of the population have little or no access to healthcare, and there are on average just 2 doctors for every 10,000 people. The director of the new Global Mercy, Nathan Klaus, says the ship has been equipped to help patients with a wide range of needs. Hundreds of volunteers worked 6 months to transform the cruiser into this hospital with modern equipment and IT systems. Mercy Ships has spent more than $200 million on the build of the Global Mercy. The Global Mercy will join the Africa Mercy, a hospital ship currently providing medical aid care in Africa.
Mali debt default due to sanctions reach 180 million. Mali has failed to pay an equivalent of $78.5 million in principal and interest on a treasury bond, the West African Debt Agency UMOATAYA said on Tuesday, pushing its debt default due to sanctions following 2 coups to 180 million. West Africa's main political bloc, the Economic Community of West Africa State, and the UEMOA Monetary Union ordered the sanctions after Mali's military ruler pushed back the timeline for elections. The missed payments, which are due on Monday, bring the total payment that Mali has defaulted on because of the sanctions since January to about 180 million.
Now, in the next story, SADC steps up war on terrorism with new regional center. The Southern African Development Community on Monday launched the Regional Counter-Terrorism Center in Dar es Salaam in a fresh bid to intensify the war against terrorism. The establishment of the SADC RCTC was fueled by the terrorism threat incidents in the region, Mozambique and Eswatini in particular. SADC Executive Secretary Elias Mahosi said the center was created to ensure enhanced coordination, strengthen partnerships, as well as to foster timely response to terrorism and violent extremism within the region. While significant progress has been made in the implementation of the SADC Regional Counter-Terrorism Strategy, there is still a need for the adoption of counter-terrorism measures, taking into consideration the current security landscape and emerging threats.
South Africa National Labour Migration Policy released for public comment. Following the completion of the cabinet processes and consultations with social partners, Employment and Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi has officially tabled the National Labour Migration Policy for public comment and engagement. Nxesi called on all interested parties to engage with the policy and to provide their feedback. Addressing a media briefing on Monday, the minister said for the first time in history of South Africa, government has formulated a comprehensive NLPM. Nxesi said South Africa is not immune to international migration trends as well as attempts to exploit these for political gains. We'll be right back after this short commercial break. Please stay with us.
Heading into the second half of your top stories, we start off with Angola. Country plans first marine conservation area. Angola, in terms of biodiversity, is planning the creation of new areas, including the first for marine conservation, at a time when the country is implementing the strategy and action plan, the results of which are an increase from 6% in 2011 to 12% of the national territory. This information was released by the Minister of State for Social Affairs, Carolina Sequeira, during her speech at the Fifth Assembly of the United Nations and the Environment. According to the minister, the assembly takes place at a time when the planet is facing a triple environmental crisis, referring to climate change, biodiversity, and pollution, which for her, the state's common home. Now, the Minister of State for the Social Area recalled in her speech that Angola recently approved the National Strategy for Climate Action. However, the official defended that the declaration should be differentiated according to national circumstances, noting that the implementation of the obligations resulting from this instrument will require capacity strengthening, financial assistance, and technology transfer to developing countries.
Moving on to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the first batch of students have arrived in Ghana. The first batch of Ghanaian nationals who have been evacuated from Ukraine has arrived at the Kokota International Airport in the capital, Accra. The 17 students arrived on Tuesday morning. This makes Ghana the first country that has been able to evacuate its citizens to flee the current unrest in Ukraine following Russia's invasion. We got to the border at 6 p.m. on Friday. It took 12 hours to cross the border amid fighting with Ukrainians. The boys had it so badly. The women also struggled, but it was tougher for men. One of the students said. The Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Kwaku Ampatara Sapog, has touted the government's role in airlifting the students into the country.
All right, in the next story, Uganda welcomes young mothers back to school. Thousands of girls are benefiting from a new Ugandan government policy encouraging girls who have given birth to return to class, part of a broader trend documented by Human Rights Watch, where African nations are encouraging young mothers back to school. The government closed schools in March 2020, part of sweeping measures to curb the COVID-19 pandemic. The new policy was introduced in December 2020, but because schools were shut until January 2022, it has only just taken effect. One of the many side effects of the closures was a spike in teen pregnancies. Now, Uganda's new policy requires schools to readmit girls after they've given birth, and parents can report school heads who refuse. Some Ugandan religious leaders oppose the shift, however. Now, in September 2021's report, New York-based rights group Human Rights Watch hailed Uganda as one of 5 sub-Saharan African countries that has instituted policies since 2019 protecting education rights of pregnant schoolgirls and adolescent mothers.
Africa climate crisis worse than expected, and this is according to the UN report. United Nations scientists have delivered a stark warning about the impact of climate change on people on the planet, saying that the ecosystem collapse, species extinctions, deadly heat waves, and floods are among the unavoidable multiple climate hazards the world will face over the next 2 decades due to global warming. According to the report, human-induced climate change is causing dangerous and widespread disruptions in nature and affecting billions of lives all over the world, despite efforts to reduce the risk, with people and ecosystems at least able to cope. The report found that the world is likely to reach 1.5 degrees of warming within the next 20 years, even in the best-case scenario of deep emission cut, and the effects will be more severe than the previous estimates. At current levels, climate change caused by human action has already led to widespread, dangerous, and possibly irreversible damage, including water shortages, extreme heat, melting ice caps and glaciers, wildfire and flooding. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has warned.
All right, now in the last of our top stories, in Namibia, census in doubt. The Namibia Statistics Agency says it will consult this week to determine whether the national population census planned for this year will go ahead. The population census is a detailed research that provides an aggregate count of all people in Namibia and collects essential information used by the government to implement national projects. Statistician General Alex Shimwafeni told the Namibian yesterday that he is going to consult the National Planning Commission on the status of this year's census. The population and housing census is set to start in August. The Planning Commission is set to receive 182 million Namibian dollars for the 2022 financial year. The development budget released by the Finance Ministry last week shows that the project activities completed in 2021 include census pilot and census mapping. However, no activities are planned for 2022. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. This is Still Africa. Good morning. So much more after the break. Now, public policy analyst Dr. Marius Kudumo discusses the ongoing military standoff between Russia and Ukraine. He also explains the possible impact it will have on global politics going forward. Kudumo also touches on Namibia's efforts to evacuate its students from Ukraine. Good morning, Doctor. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
We are fantastic. It's so good to talk to you this morning. What is your take on the ongoing standoff between Russia and Ukraine? And would you say that it could have been avoided?
Yeah, it is an unfortunate situation, but it's difficult to say that it should have been avoided because the parties to the conflict, especially Russia, have actually taken a hardline position. Also, Ukraine was maybe backing on NATO to support. So preventive diplomacy, the space for preventive diplomacy was limited. So it is difficult to say that it should have been avoided.
All right. Now, from a geopolitical perspective, how will this shape global politics going forward?
I think one of the aspects that we can expect is that we are getting into a polarized world where countries are taking side. Instead of cooperation, we are getting into confrontation. And with the challenges that are there in the world, COVID-19, inequality, poverty, this is not the state where you want to be. You want a world order that is concerned about human security, that is concerned about addressing global issues. So we are getting into a polarized world. We are getting into confrontation instead of cooperation of states.
All right. NATO has been the common denominator in most of the conflicts involving global superpowers. Is it safe to say NATO should be reformed?
Not actually NATO, but the global world order. The global governance is what needs to be reformed. And when you talk about the global governance, you are referring to the United Nations. It is very clear that the United Nations, especially the Security Council, in its current architecture, is not capable of dealing with international security and international peace. So that's why many countries were calling for the reform of the United Nations, especially the Security Council, so that it is capable of dealing with current issues. As it is very difficult.
All right, speaking of the United Nations, Namibia opted to abstain on the vote on Ukraine this week. Would you say this was a wise move?
Yeah, look, we must not jump in the back wagon without understanding exactly what happened. So it's difficult for me to speak with authority on the matter because I don't have all the background information. But we must understand what was decided is whether to put the Russia-Ukraine conflict war on the agenda of the Human Rights Commission in Geneva. Now, basically, in this type of meetings, there are procedural matters in terms of how to bring an agenda item on the agenda. In many instances, you will have, for example, you need to provide a month or 3 months for that item to be on the agenda. But of course, this is a crisis matter. I think there is provision for urgent matters. But unless we understand exactly what happened, it is difficult to judge. And what was decided is whether to debate this matter or not. I think the Namibian government or the ambassador of Namibia is in a better position to explain why we abstained.
All right. What do you make of the talks that the abstaining could have an adverse impact on our bilateral ties with the two countries involved?
I think so. Look, states in international relations serve their own interest. The behavior of states must be explained in terms of self-interest. And in the UN system and globally, we still have this doctrine and principle of the sovereignty and independence of states. It presupposes that states make independent decisions. And therefore, I don't see that we need to read a lot into this on the basis that what states do or not do in international relations is determined by the self-interest at that state. For example, if trade is at stake, if natural resources at stake, those issues will become irrelevant. But in terms of the Constitution of Namibia, we need to be advancing positions that are consistent with the values and principles of the Namibian Constitution.
Yes, understandably so, because I was going to wonder if, I don't know, the international moral standing of Namibia is something that matters to the government with regards to the perception of its citizens. And if Namibia abstained from the decision to debate, that is not the same as abstaining, from voting, on a particular side. This is essentially, like you said, you want to get all the facts. How do you actually get all the facts when you're abstaining from the debate itself? Of course, you said the ambassador is in a better position to explain that, but please just give us a short take on how you view how the government handled the evacuation of Namibian students studying in Ukraine.
Yeah, before I come to that, I just want to explain what you just said. Look, what was debated is whether this matter should debated or not. And the majority vote says it must be debated. And it will be debated. It's during that debate when we'll hear what was the rationale for Namibia abstaining. So we must read more during the debate, not prior to the debate, although you expected Namibia maybe to say, let's debate this issue. On the evacuation, I think we should have handled it better in terms of prevention than cure. We were fined when the crisis is erupted, and then we try to evacuate those students that are there. I think we should have done better. We should have read the situation earlier enough, and we should have evacuated those students before the real war have started. So indeed, my view is we should have done better. We should have.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Marius Kudumo, public policy analyst. Thank you very much for lending us your expertise on Africa. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day, sir. This is still Africa Good Morning. More after the break.
Swiping or tapping your FNB Visa card is the safest, easiest, most rewarding way to transact. Because if you swipe your FNB Visa debit or credit card 3 times a month, you'll automatically be entered into the draw to win your share of a mammoth 250,000 Namibian dollars. Competition ends 15 February 2022. T's, C's and rules apply. Switch to FNB, Bank of the Changeables.
It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, and it's time now for us to go to Zambia and talk to Master Mike Sichula. Master Mike, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good morning.
All right, I am fantastic. At least 57 Zambian nationals have managed to cross into Poland from the war-torn Ukraine. Please tell us about this.
Yes, that's the information that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation has been able to brief the media. The minister, Mr. Stanley Kabuko, yesterday said 57 Zambians have crossed into Poland from Ukraine. And the minister went on to say the government is intending to evacuate the first batch of Zambian nationals that have crossed into the Ukrainian border into Ukraine by Friday this week, meaning the chartered plane that was stationed in Poland is supposed to bring these Zambians back to Zambia. However, 57 Zambian students have opted to stay in Ukraine for unknown reasons. Probably, maybe they are hoping that the war may not accelerate as others may think. So they have opted to stay back in Ukraine. There are 141 Zambians documented in Ukraine. So we are hoping that by Friday this week, Zambian nationals who managed to cross the border will be heading back home to see what happens later on.
All right. Now, Zambia's national energy regulator has adjusted upward the price of petrol and diesel, attributing the increment to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Please expand on that.
Yes, the Zambia, the Energy Regulation Board, which is the national regulator of energy, have developed a new system of increasing and adjusting the price of fuel. So every month, the Energy Regulation Board is announcing a new price. For instance, last month in January, the other month in January, the price of fuel had gone down. So there are two factors that the Energy Regulation Board is using. One is the depreciation of the kwacha, as well as the global international oil prices. So according to the ERB, they have said the latest increment is due to, they have attributed to the war between Russia and Ukraine. So they are saying also, besides this war, the kwacha in the last month did not perform favorably well against the United States dollar. As you may be aware, the Zambian kwacha is one of the second behind the Ghanaian currency that is worst performing in the last few months. So definitely in going forward, the Energy Regulation Board are saying the price of fuel may be adjusted upwards every month. The ERB has moved from the quota system of reviewing the price of fuel to the monthly system, which is bringing about these changes almost every month.
All right. In order to assist learners catch up on the lost educational time during COVID-19, authorities have extended by 2 weeks the closure of Term 1.
Yes, the Ministry of General Education have extended by 2 weeks the closure of all schools. The decision has been taken in order to allow learners who did not have ample time to catch up with lessons. As you may be aware that Zambia was heavily hit by the COVID-19, such that schools were closed, prolonged closure, and when they opened, they didn't open with all the full numbers. They had to ensure that there's social distancing and the like. So in going forward, the minister said since the pandemic seems to be easing, we should give learners ample time to catch up. So instead of closing in the first week of April, they are going to close later on so that they have time to catch up, and also teachers have also time to do other work that they did not do when schools were closed due to the pandemic.
All right. Now, lastly, a university has developed an application system to guard against mobile money theft and scams. Get into that, please, Mike.
Yeah, the Information and Communication University is one of the many privately owned universities that we have in the country. So in trying to assist mobile people who use mobile transaction, because there's been a lot of cases of theft, scammers using different tricks to fraudulently get money from people through mobile transaction. This has become a source of concern even to the telecom regulator. So this university has taken it upon itself to develop an app which they say will help to track stolen phones in a less tedious manner compared to the current cumbersome system where it takes maybe even months or sometimes you may never recover your phone when it is lost. So this app, they're saying it is going to help such issues. They're also saying that this app will track a phone using an easy tracking system within an accurate radius. They also say that this app is capable of detecting scams, thereby protecting people's money in mobile transactions. So it's something that has excited a number of Zambians who have been victims of mobile scammers due to online and mobile financial transactions.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the stories from Zambia.
Thank you very much. I hope Namibians can also lay their hands on this scam to get rid of the Yahoo boys who have terrorized a lot of people across the African continent.
Indeed, indeed. All right, this is still Africa. Good morning. Let's have a look at the weather forecast up next. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is under increasing pressure to publicly clarify South Africa's stance with regards to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Here to clarify on that and more that is happening in South Africa is Ari Hochad. Good morning, Ari. Do take it away.
Yes, very good morning, Ashwin and everyone. Yes, there's increased pressure for the president to make not say statements, but the stance to explain the stance of South Africa in the situation. There's been contradicting statements from the government, and that is the challenge that is on the table at the moment. I think Naledi Pandor was one minister that made a statement immediately after it all happened in Ukraine and said that the important point for her was that the statement was that Russia should withdraw. It was later adjusted, and it was from the presidency, the statement was that they don't want to take sides and they rather want to see negotiations. So that is a bit of a different stance in that. And obviously there's a big relationship that comes from 30 years ago between Russia and South Africa, and also part of the BRICS organization. BRICS is also with Brazil, India, and also China, together with Russia. South Africa is part of the BRICS agreement. So that has been under discussion, but at the moment, there's the official stance is that the South African government say there must be negotiations, and there's not an official stance that say that Russia must withdraw.
All right.
All right. The South African wine producers are still trying to recover from the impact of COVID-19. Now the industry faces further uncertainties because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Please tell us about this briefly.
Yes, it's not only the wine industry; it is also related to other industries like the citrus exports as well. But related to the wine exports, it was a tough year for COVID-19, as we all know. 300 million excess liters wine in South Africa, but there's about 6.9 million liters that's exported to Russia. That's about 207 million rands worth of exports. That's just a 2% component of all the exports of the wine industry. But the challenge at the moment is that the SWIFT interbank payment system is under threat. That has been stopped from companies that is from the West, so to speak. And so South African wine the industry is concerned that they won't get their money because the SWIFT interbank system is under threat and Russians can't do business via their banks. So that is the challenge at the moment.
All right. Now, the effectiveness of South African police remains a point of discussion as the National Police Commissioner has been relieved of his duties by President Cyril Ramaphosa, and it is unclear what the future of current Minister of Police Bheki Cele is. Could you briefly get into that as well, Ari?
Yes, it was General Kela Sitole that, well, there was also reports that he resigned, but I think it was more that it was told to resign probably. And it all goes back quite a bit. Not only the unrest in July 2021 didn't help, and that was a big case where the police really failed the system. But General Sitole and the Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, the two of them there together, they're known to have differences. And there's been many to and fro statements and contradicting statements from them, unfortunately, in the last year. The police is not operating at the moment as it should. But the reports are that the Minister Kelly might survive is maybe the word. All the inquiries into the unrest of July 2021, and there's also some commentators say there's a political reason for that as well. Minister Kelly coming from KwaZulu-Natal, and that it seems like President Ramaphosa don't want to create more challenges for the people in KwaZulu-Natal to have Minister Kelly removed as well.
All right. Electricity and fuel is increasing in South Africa. How are the South African citizens receiving the news? Sorry.
Yes, not very well. It's been for a while. The electricity has been a challenge. Sometimes it's even off, as we know, with load shedding. But Eskom asked for a 20.9% increase. That's a massive amount, but they were only allowed 9.5% electricity increase. So that is the one side. So the inflation, the electricity inflation the last year is about 18%. National inflation is about 4%. So that's a big increase. It doesn't help the households. So they pay a lot more. And then we all know, like in Namibia as well, the petrol increase with right about R1.50 per litre is going to make a massive influence just on the money at hand for the average household. So it's just cash on hand. And so that is a big challenge for South Africans.
All right. Now, Ari, please tell us briefly about the Yabonga Children's Project.
Great to see people make a big difference. It's in Kailicha. It is a woman that is helping children in an early age. So that is support the informal, the education in young ages, still below 10 years old. There's 200 children that they help. There's also a feeding scheme. They help them with sport, academy, and arts. And there's also a residence program where they can have temporary residency age 5 to 10. So brilliant work they're doing. I tip my hat for them.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Ari. We tip our hat to you for consistently bringing us the news as it is from South Africa.
Big pleasure. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.
Cheers. Now, if you were driving in the Windhoek streets last night, you'd have noticed that there were clusters of cars at just about every service station as a fuel price bomb has just hit Namibia. We'll be talking about that and more in economic news after the break.
Have you received a loan from NSFAF? NSFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NSFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NSFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NSFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag #paybackthemoney.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's get into your first economic news story, and we are focusing on the fuel price hike in Namibia. From today, motorists will pay 1.20 Namibian dollars per litre extra for petrol and 1.30 Namibian dollars more for diesel, the Ministry of Mines and Energy has announced. This is the second fuel price increase for the year, following 8 increases in 2021. The ministry warned that the country might continue to experience further fuel price increments during the coming months as the market remains volatile. Now, despite the historic increase, prices are still substantially lower than in South Africa, around 3.73 Namibian dollars per litre cheaper for petrol and 1.68 Namibian dollars per litre cheaper for diesel, McGregor pointed out. And that is Robert McGregor, head of research at Cirrus Capital. According to the ministry's executive director, Simeon Negumbo, the sharp increases in petroleum products are ascribed by the mismatch between global oil supply and demand, and the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries had to cut its supply drastically and is now reluctant to increase supply. In addition, geopolitical tension in oil-producing regions is also driving up fuel prices, he pointed out.
Russia to temporarily ban foreigners from selling their assets. Russia will temporarily stop foreign investors from selling Russian assets to ensure they take a considered decision, not one driven by political pressure, the Prime Minister said on Tuesday as Moscow responds to intensifying Western sanctions. Russia's huge sovereign wealth fund will also be pressed into action, spending up to $10.3 billion to buy shares in Russian companies, the government decree showed, confirming an earlier report by Reuters. Russian authorities are hurrying to respond to increasingly harsh sanctions imposed by Western nations in Moscow, which invaded Ukraine last Thursday. The measure ranges from curbs on the central bank's ability to use its gold and foreign exchange reserves to the exclusion of big Russian banks from the international financial system.
In the next story, end of the runway for 200 ex-SAA employees who opted for failed training scheme. The Department of Public Enterprises on Tuesday confirmed that about 200 staff members of state-owned South African Airways will be let go at the end of March this year. These employees chose not to take voluntary severance packages during SAA's business rescue process and opted to be placed on a government-run training scheme. SAA said on Tuesday that it cannot comment on the issue as it is an internal staff matter. However, DPE Director General Khataso Hlaukudi says SAA has unfortunately found itself in a dire financial situation due to state capture that was enabled at the airline, as documented in the Zondo Commission report. In terms of SAA's rescue plan, the workforce had to be reduced from about 4,700 to only about 1,000. In an effort to save more jobs, it was proposed in consultations between the DPE and unions that another 1,000 employees be placed on a temporary training scheme. Now, the majority of employees, 3,041, ended up opting for severance packages.
Cedi now worst among Africa's top currencies. The Ghana cedi is now the worst performing currency among Africa's top currencies, and this is according to Bloomberg. Bloomberg pegs the depreciation of cedi to the dollars at 8.86% between the 1st of January 2022 and the 25th of February 2022. This is followed by the Zambian kwacha with a depreciation of 6.2%. In 2020, the International Media and Research Organization rated the Ghana cedi as the best performing currency in the world against the United States dollar. Ghana and the Zambian economies have been battling the fiscal slippages, whilst their rising debt have created fears amongst investors regarding the economic outlook. Whereas Zambia agreed to an International Monetary Fund bailout of $1.4 billion in December 2021 for a crucial 3-year program to restructure its debt, Ghana is adamant about returning to the Bretton Woods institution for a similar program to build investor credibility.
All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, Aina, believe it or not, I was a cricketer for a large chunk of my life. Now, was I good enough to be on the news? Probably not. But that's why we have Ari to report on everything from the Proteas and sport happening around the world. Have a look.
Good day, everyone. It's time for international sporting news, and we start off with some cricket news, and it is South African Proteas that has just completed the second test in New Zealand. That is a two-test series that was played in Christchurch in New Zealand, and it's probably one of the best turnarounds and comebacks in modern test history. After losing the first test, the South African team lost by innings and 276 runs, and that's about as big a loss as you can get in cricket. And South Africans turned it around just in a few days and won the second test on the last day, also in Christchurch on the same field, and they won by 198 runs. So a great performance by the South African team to come back and win the second test. Just in brief quickly, South Africa won the toss and batted in bowler-friendly conditions and made 364 in their first innings, to which New Zealand replied by 293, and then South Africa declared their second innings on 354 for 9, and then bowled out New Zealand on the last day with threatening rain around. South Africa bowled them out for 293 to win by an innings and 198 runs. Man of the match for the second test was Kagiso Rabada of South Africa. Also great performances with the bat for the South Africans by Sarel Erwee, 108 in the first innings, and also Kyle Verreynne. He scored a great 136 not out in the second innings. More cricket news, and that's staying in New Zealand, is that the Women's World Cup, that is a 50-over World Cup, is going to start in a few days' time. The first game will be played on the 4th of March. That is New Zealand, the host, that will play against the West Indies. The next day it will be South Africa that will play against Bangladesh. That is the 5th of March. And then a big day also is England. Big game is also that England that will play against Australia also on the 5th of March. Results from some of the warm-up games. There was one warm-up game maybe to mention, that is Australia, that's unbeaten for many games. They played against New Zealand in a warm-up game. Australia batted first. They made 321 all out, that is in the last over, and then New Zealand incredibly made the runs just for the loss of 1 wicket, so they scored 325 for the loss of 1, and that is with Sophie Devine with the unbeaten 161, the big performer for New Zealand in that game, that warm-up game. That was New Zealand playing Australia. So the World Cup starts on the 4th of March. That is New Zealand hosting the West Indies in the opening game. Now we continue with international sport as the sporting world continued to react to Russia's invasion into the Ukraine, and the newest statement was made by the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, and the statement was made by the executive board of the IOC, and they recommended that all sport bodies should ban Russian and Belarus athletes and officials from competing in any competitions. Belarus is included in this as they allowed the Russian forces to go through their country to invade the Ukraine. Also, FIFA, the governing body of soccer and football in the world, also suspended Russian teams, that's men's and women's teams, from all competition. And also a statement was made by UEFA, the European Football Association, that they said that they cancelled the sponsorship of Gazprom, and that is the big energy giant from Russia that is a sponsor of many European competitions. And so they announced that they distanced themselves from the sponsorship of Gazprom as from immediate effect. And now we continue with some rugby news on international sport, and the World Rugby announced that Japan will host France. That is in 2 tests that will be played in Japan, in Tokyo, that will be played in July. France and Tokyo have not played in a test match since 2017. And of course, France will host the next World Cup in Paris. And the 2 games will be played in Tokyo on the 2nd and the 9th of July. And staying with rugby, it is the World Cup Sevens that will continue. It will happen. It is confirmed that it will take place in South Africa. It is scheduled to take place at the Cape Town Stadium from the 9th to the 11th of September in Cape Town. And the word from the organisers are that tickets for that tournament has been opened, and it's been going very well. And tickets went on sale a few days ago, and already 60,000 tickets have been sold for that tournament, the 3-day tournament that will start on the 9th of September and finish the 11th of September at the Cape Town Stadium in South Africa. And to conclude the international sports news for today, we look at some golf news, and it is Ryder Cup news. The Ryder Cup is a team event that is between the USA and Europe team. And the previous tournament was at Whistling Straits, so that is in Wisconsin in the USA, and the USA won that tournament, or won that competition quite convincingly by 19 points to 9, and that is a record win for the USA. So Europe wants to revenge, and the next tournament is going to be played in Rome, that is in Italy, at the Marco Simone Golf and Country Club. And the news from the USA team is that they have announced that Zach Johnson will be the captain, the team captain for Team America in the next Ryder Cup. He is very experienced. He was the vice captain in the previous two tournaments, the previous two Ryder Cups, and he also won the Masters and also won the British Open. So that's Ryder Cup news. The next Ryder Cup will be played next year in Italy at Rome in the Marco Simone Country Club, and that is Europe playing America. So that's the international sports news for today. Hope you have a great day, and we talk again tomorrow. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning through the last hour. Let's get straight into your highlights. UN reports at least 536 civilian casualties in Ukraine. World's largest civilian hospital ship gets ready for Senegal trip. Mali debt defaults due to sanctions reach $180 million. SADC steps up war on terrorism with new regional center. In South Africa, National Labour Migration Policy released for public comment. Fuel bomb hits Namibia. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Africa Good Morning. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can email them to us. Actually, you may post them on our Facebook and Twitter pages. That's at Africa Good Morning. Additionally, we are on our website. It's called One Up To. Please do visit us for more content that you love to see. And on that note, it's all my love, all my light, and God bless.
Swela Jaganaka.